All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and excited to have you here this morning. This is Jay Richardson with Grace School of Theology, and excited for another session with our church partnership series. And just to remind you guys what we're hoping to do, we really just want to serve you and help equip you to be more effective ministers of the gospel. And today our topic is shepherding. And we have a special guest today. I'm super excited to have him. His name is Dr. Kevin Leman. Dr. Leman is an internationally known psychologist, award-winning author, humorist, New York Times best-selling author, radio and TV personality, and a speaker. He's also known as the birth order guy. And shepherding is a passion of his, and Dr. Leman's going to be talking to us about that today. And I learned just recently in talking with Dr. Leman that an interesting fact. He's written like over 60 books, maybe more than that, maybe 80 books, maybe 100, who knows. But every single book that he's written, he's done that with a pen and paper. He's not used an old-fashioned typewriter or a computer. And so I asked him, how do you not get the major hand cramps? And the next thing he said is the number of American Airlines napkins that I diagram books out on would not fit in his luggage. So, Dr. Leman, we're excited to have you today. Thanks for joining us and sharing about shepherding with us today.
Yeah, well, Jay, it's nice to be with you. Yeah, for everybody's knowledge, Jay is a one of a kind. He's a wonderful human being, and he called me and asked me if I would do this, and I said, "Hey, I'm your man." So I'm glad to be with you guys this morning. We're going to have fun. We're talking about leadership. And by the way, if you have to tell someone you're the leader, I hope you're all seated. You're not. Let's start with that. Okay. A couple things about me. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I was the youngest of three children. I graduated fourth in my high school class, which sounds admirable. The problem was it was fourth in the bottom and not fourth in the top. There's the problem. So I couldn't get into college, couldn't get into a university. Nobody wanted me. Our own church denominational school, they had the sense to turn me down, even after I sent them scripture about forgiveness. So I think those guys, and by the way, they finally relented. 9 days before the semester started, they caved and they let me in on probation. So I was admitted to college on probation with a 12-unit load max. And they told my parents straight out, we don't think this is a good idea, but we're going to give the kid a shot. Well, proof of the living God. And by the way, I didn't know God at that point in my life. Yes, my mother dragged me to church, and I knew Jesus loved me and a few of those songs. But quite frankly, I wanted no part of God at that point in my life. But anyway, miraculously, I got admitted, again, on probation, eked out a C-minus average, went back my sophomore year. I sat out the fall semester because my parents were poor. We had no money. But I had to go back in the winter quarter to play baseball. I was a baseball player. And in that quarter, I got thrown out of this college who prefers not to be advertised. And I got sent home to Tucson, Arizona, where I now live. My parents had just moved there. I got a job. I wanted an executive level, junior executive level position. I was shooting for that. I ended up being a janitor in a hospital. And my life changed one day when my beautiful bride walked down the hallway. And I scoped her out like most men would do. And I said, whoa, where'd she come from? And that same day, I met her in the men's room of the hospital. You heard that right. So I was swabbing out the men's restroom, and in walks my bride with a little old guy with a walker, and she's helping him go potty. Our eyes met. I said to myself, it's her, say something stupid. And I said, would you like to go to the World's Fair with me? Well, the World's Fair was in New York City. This is Tucson, Arizona. I'm making $195 a month. She said, well, I don't know. I said, how about lunch then? Well, to speed this up, 3.5 months later, she pops the question. She says, would you like to go to church with me? And I thought, holy cow. And that's not actually what I said. She's one of them. And she was one of the triggers that really turned my life around. So you're listening to a guy who lacks a high school education in many ways, and yet I've written 72 books for the record. So I have lived a blessed life. I've done every TV show you ever watched, including Oprah, all the rest of the talk shows as part of Good Morning America in the mid-90s. So I speak, I do seminars all over the country. I love doing churches. They're life-changing for churches. We usually do a Sunday, Monday thing. So anyway, I'm going to share with you from a couple of books. I'm going to show them to you real quickly. One is called The Way of the Shepherd. Now, if you know anything about the book business, a book goes into hardback for 1 year and then it goes to paperback. This little puppy has been in hardback for 24 years. Okay. So that doesn't happen. It's a word of mouth bestseller. And then the other book I'll mention on leadership is a brand new book called Be a Great Leader by Friday. I have a lot of Friday books. I have a New Husband by Friday, Have a You by Friday, Have a New Kid by Friday. That's a New York Times bestseller. And by the way, in that book, I say an unhappy child is a healthy child. You can think about that someday. It's an interesting statement. And then the Birth Order book, if you've never read it, it gets into family systems and firstborns and middle children, babies, and why we're all different. And that's a book I just can't get away from. Like Jay said, they call me the Birth Order guy. And then a book that all Christians should read by 6 p.m. tonight, Sheet Music. Yes, it's a sex book. And I push it to the end of the table about as far as I can. I know when to bring it back, but I've spoken in churches all over the country on that topic, and people like it. So anyway, what else? You had mentioned something oh, yes. And we have 5 kids. We had our first 3 kids, and then we had a little surprise. Anybody have a little surprise out there? We had a surprise at age 42 and 44, my wife being 42. And she was like the mascot of the family, by the way. We were so happy to have her. So she was a surprise. And then when I was 50 and my wife was 48, we had the shocker. And that's where God and I had some real serious talks. Hey, Lord, you got to be kidding me. Really? Is this your idea of a sense of humor, Lord? But anyway, she is now working for Disney Imagineering, and her stuff is all over all the Disney parks in the world. All my kids have done well, which is interesting since their father didn't do so well. So anyway, let's start talking about leadership, shepherding, whatever you want to call it. And the first point is you have to know, if you're a shepherd, you have to know your flock. And you get to know them one at a time. And by the way, a guy named Steve Covey, who's left this earth, he's not with us anymore, he said something rather profound. I wrote it down. He said, start with the end in mind. So as a leader, what's your goal? I mean, where are you going? Do you have a statement, a visible statement that people that work with you can look at, a mission statement? There ought to be one there. But really, you need to engage your people one at a time. You can't lead people you don't know, to put it bluntly. And then moving on, we're going to move through this sort of quickly, by the way, and at the end we'll have some time for discussion if you'd like. But you have to discover the shape, and I made an acrostic out of that just to try to be creative as I could be. And that acrostic would be strength, heart, attitude. All you firstborn children are writing down these right now, by the way. So strength, heart, attitude, personality, and experience. There's your shape. And here's what you have to understand. If you're a leader, the choice of your sheep makes all the difference in the world. It makes flock management much more easier. You have to start with healthy sheep. I talk about the power of the right hire. And by the way, you've all seen letters of recommendation, haven't you, on people? Pay no attention to them whatsoever. None. Zero. Nada. If you're curious, get on the honker and call someone. They'll tell you something over the phone that's not being recorded that they never share on a piece of paper. That's just the way the world works today. But if you end up with a couple of losers, wow, you're in trouble. And is it easy to get rid of people today? No, it's not. So just listen up. Start with healthy sheep. You're going to be great. You know, I wrote a book called Be a Great Leader by Friday, and wrote a book called Have a New Kid by Friday. And one of the things I try to teach people is you need to understand just a few basic concepts of birth order. And I get asked by companies, Cincinnati Financial, for example, they hired me. They finally talked me into going to Munich, Germany. I don't like to fly far, but they talked me into it. They let my wife come. Her mother was born in Germany, so that seemed to lock it in. But they brought me and a guy named Steve Forbes in. I was their speaker. And Steve preceded me. And then I got a chance to talk. And what did they want? Cincinnati Financial, they insure insurance companies. What do they want me to speak about? Birth order. People love birth order. The first two kids in the family are night and day different. I'm a baby of the family. I can tell you, I talked my way into Disney World. I planned on 10 minutes. I have to admit it took me 20. But I ended up talking my way in for 9 free tickets. How did I do that? Well, I'm the baby of the family. That's one of the reasons why I pulled that off. Firstborns wouldn't have the gall to go over and say, I'd like 9 free tickets to the park. But I started off by seeing this little sign that said, media relations. Media relations. I spent my life in media. And I looked at it. I looked at my wife. My wife looked at me and she said, Leamy, this is a quote, Leamy with a finger like this. Leamy, no. She's talking to me like I'm a German shepherd and I'm supposed to sit. Well, I have to tell you, I defied my wife's orders. I said, hey, I just need 5. No, Leamy, it's hot out here. Just get the plastic out. I know what you're thinking. I went over and I walk up to a guy named Daniel. I said, hi, Daniel, could you help me? Now, if you're a leader, memorize that short sentence. Could you help me? What's Daniel going to say? No, I'm not going to help you. Drop dead, you creep. I'm on second base. He's going to say, how can I help you? Well, I'd like to see if I could get some tickets into the park, comp tickets. And I am a member of the Screen Actors Guild, believe it or not. And with protocol, you can get 2 tickets to anything. So he gives me the company line, and I said, oh, Daniel, I understand that, but my son just graduated from college down here, and it's just spur of the moment. We wanted to come up here to Disneyland, and I'd sure appreciate it if you could help us out. Well, just then the boss comes in. And by the way, I said to Daniel, by the way, you're a firstborn son, aren't you, Daniel? He looked at me and he said, have we met before? I said, no, but you are a firstborn son, aren't you? Yeah, I am. And the boss comes in. And I said, hey, everybody stop picking their nose. Here comes the boss. He looked like the boss. I assumed he was the boss. He had a little ear thing, a little radio on him and stuff. So now the boss is listening as well. I'm going to shorten this because we don't want to spend too much time with this. But it does prove that birth order can be an advantage, no matter if you're a firstborn, a middle, a baby, or an only. Long story short, the guy looks up to the boss and says, like, what do I do? The guy nods his head and says, okay. So he hands me 4 tickets. At that point, I should be on my knees thanking him and God. I got 4 tickets worth $180 a pop. So I said, actually, Daniel, do you see that tall blonde lady over there against the palm tree who looks a little ticked off? That's my bride, Mrs. Uppington. That's my nickname for my wife. She's the classy one of the 2 of us. I said, actually, I got 9 people with me. Can you imagine? I got 4 tickets. I'm asking for 5 more. The guy looks back to the boss, and again, I'm shortening this. He says, help the doctor out. I took those tickets. I put them in my back pocket. I slumped my shoulders. I thanked him. And I turned, looking dejected and lost with my tail on my legs. I set my firstborn wife up like a egg fallen from a tall chicken. And she said to me, okay, Mr. Big Time, show me the tickets. I walked in there and I fanned 9 free tickets. Now, I'm telling you, that was a skill that I learned as the youngest child in the family. You youngest children out there, you could sell dead rats for a living. I booked myself on a show called Our Magazine years ago when the publicist couldn't get me booked on it. Well, I did something, I'm the talent. You don't do this. You don't call the producer of the show, and I went on the show. But I did. But when I called the show, a young woman said, Our Magazine, may I help you? Yes, you could help me. I'd like to talk to Steve Clements. He was the executive producer of the show. She says, well, who's calling? Here's the critical moment. Who's calling? I said, Mr. Nobody. She said, excuse me? Mr. Nobody, Nobody, nobody. And she laughed. I said, well, actually, I have a name. My name's Kevin Leman, but trust me, I'm a nobody, but I'd really like to talk to Steve. She had power in her little index finger. She pushed the button. Long story short, I talked to Steve Clements for 120 seconds. I was booked on the show. So the social skills that you youngest children have, and those organizational skills that you firstborn and only children have, and those mediating skills that you middle children have can really pay off in life. And as a leader, the first thing you got to understand is who you are. Now, moving along, and I'll try to be a little quicker here. You got to help your sheep identify with you. You know, a shepherd, actually, if you're raising sheep these days, they punch a little number in their ear. And I know as a young dad, when I was raising kids and they hit the teenage years and they went out for the evening, I'd always say, hey, don't forget you're a Leman. And I mentioned that at a speaking engagement once, and someone came up and said, hey, what's with the remember you're a Leman? What does that mean? I said, quite frankly, I'm not sure. I guess it means remember the things we've taught you as you go out tonight. You know, living with teenagers today in this world's a little different, isn't it? Well, what makes a good leader? Let me ask you a question. Your history buffs. Let's do this first. Name a former president, deceased, who was noted particularly for his diplomacy with China. Are you all guessing? How many of you said George Bush Sr.? You're close. You're close. But the gold answer is Richard Nixon. But was Richard Nixon a great leader? How about his integrity? How about Bill Clinton? He's the only president that was a Rhodes Scholar. But was he a great leader? I remember he was married to Hillary. Hillary's the one that told us it takes a village to raise a child. Personally, I think it takes a village to keep an eye on Bill, but that's... You have the oozing with integrity. And this is something interesting I've run into when I talk to companies and businesses across the U.S. and Canada. You know, we've all ran into a situation with companies that really ticked us off, okay? And you're mad, and you're going to call the Better Business Bureau, and you're going to write a letter to the CEO. But here's what the researchers tell us. If a company really screws up, okay, if they make it right with you, even though you're angry and your blood pressure's high, once they make it right with you, do you know what you will do? The researchers tell us you'll make 22 positive statements or endorsements for this company who you were ready to call your attorney on and all that kind of stuff. So when you're a leader, you got to own it. And you're going to make mistakes. I always tell people at my seminars, flaunt your imperfection. By the way, I was talking to a young CEO female the other day, and I asked her, I said, hey, tell me something. What do you do when someone really excels in their job? They do a project that's really well done. And she said, I sent them an email commending them for their work. I looked at her. I said, you got to be kidding me. An email? How many of you out there listening to me, watching me right now, are looking forward to your next email? Give me a break. You never do that. How about the power of the written note? Let me talk to you briefly about the power of the written note. I love it when I get a written note from people. I've gotten written notes from some very famous people. I won't name drop, but many of them throughout my career who have said nice things about the things that I've shared with people about leadership. But let's think about a written note for just this real quick second. It's definite. It's specific. It's long-lasting. It makes an impression. It allows you to express maybe what you would have a difficult time describing or discussing audibly. Some people are just better at that. It shows you care. And it exemplifies encouragement. And by the way, with St. Paul, who started his letter to the Corinthians and the Romans, he starts with what? Encouragement. You can hang on to notes forever and reread them when you have a rainy day. It communicates a concern. People want to know you give a rip. It's warm and it's personal. I'm going to underscore this statement. Leadership is personal. As a leader, you have to set high standards of performance. People need to know what this is all about. Maybe some of you recognize the name Sonia Carson. Sonia was a visionary. She was also the mother of Dr. Ben Carson and Curtis Carson, his brother. And many of you know the story, but it needs repeating. Sonia, who I think she cleaned people's houses, if I remember right, for a living. She required both Ben and Brother Curtis to do a book report once a week. It had to be turned in to them every Friday. And it was, I think, when Dr. Carson was in junior high school, he discovered something interesting about his mom. She was illiterate. She couldn't read. But she knew the way out of the ghetto. It was through education power, green power, economic power, educational power. And back in those days, of course, everybody was talking about what? Black power. I have a good friend who passed away a few years ago. His name is Jerry Kindall. If you're a baseball fan, you might remember him. He played with the Minnesota Twins, Chicago Cubs. He was a good friend of mine, and I knew his family well. Jerry won 3 national championships at the University of Arizona, where I was the dean of students for 10 years of my life. I got to know him intimately well. Have you ever seen these rings that athletes get, like Super Bowl rings? I was on Good Morning America one morning with Drew Brees, and I saw his Super Bowl ring. I'm telling you, they'd choke a horse. I don't know how they get them on their finger. They're huge. Well, Jerry had one from the American League Championship he won with the Minnesota Twins. And again, we went to the same church. And one morning I ran into his wife, Georgia. And she had this pendant, this diamond pendant hanging around her neck. And I looked at it. I said, Georgia, that is a beautiful pendant. She said, didn't I tell you about that? I said, no. She said, my Jerry gave it to me. Intuitively. I'm not making this up. I mean, I'm in tears telling you this story. Intuitively, I said to her, I said, not the ring. And she said, yes. You know what he did? He took that ring. He said he was fingering it one day in church, fingering it, just playing with it, looking down at it. And he said, you know what? I need to share this ring with those I love the most. He melted that sucker down. He made 4 gold pins for his 4 kids. Put the diamond around his wife's neck. Listen, if I, Kevin Leman, had one of those rings, I would wear it on my nose. I mean, I'd walk around with that thing forever. I'm just telling you, that's a sign of a great leader. Do you have the humility? Remember, God hates pride. I remind myself of that too often. I can get prideful. But anyway, back to the fact that as a leader, you must relentlessly communicate your values and your sense of mission. I talk to a lot of parents. I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. Parents today are clueless for the most part. They need to read a book like mine. But as a leader, and I ask parents all the time, they said, all right, you're the leader of your family. Do you have a port of call? On the ocean of life, what's your port of call? Where are you going? I love to ask the question to parents, are you rearing your kids? And rear is actually the proper, it's not raise. Are you raising your kids? No, I know rear sounds bad, but it's actually the proper way to say it. But are you rearing your kids in a home or hotel? That's my question. You answer it in your mind right now. You know, most Americans raise their kids in hotels. What does that mean? It means that we give them room service, food service, and little is expected of them. Quite frankly, your 11-year-old today should be paying all the bills in your family online. You want practical knowledge to that kid about how much a mortgage payment is, or a car payment, or rent. There it is. Kids need to give back to families. They don't. We snow-call the roads to life for children. Then you wonder how come so many young people today are like a piece of balsa wood floating on the ocean, being thrown one way or another, because we haven't trained them up, quite frankly. So you have to remember that great leadership is not only professional, it's personal. You'll always hear a lot of sports examples from me because I'm a sports nut in many ways. And for the record, so was one J. Richardson, but I'll proceed. There's a young guy who was being recruited by Coach Olson at the University of Arizona. Lute Olson's a Hall of Fame coach who I got to know very well. And a young recruit came in and met Coach Olson for the very first time with earphones on. I laugh thinking about this. This kid ended up playing in the NBA, by the way. An hour and a half later, guess where he was? He was at Tucson International Airport going home. That's as far as he got recruited to Luke. You don't walk in with headphones into someone's office. You just don't. So Luke was one of those guys who had his expectations. And, you have to know who you are. I mean, we talk about leadership in the family. Y'all love Ephesians 5:22. Men love that one. Wives, submit to your husbands. We pull it out, show it to our wives once in a while. Good luck with that, Charlie. Let me take you to the marriage relationship and look at Ephesians 5:21. In fact, most Bibles start that paragraph with Ephesians 5:22. The one I use starts at 5:21. That simply says, honor one another in Christ. That's what it says. So you want to be a good leader, gentlemen, you better know what that woman's all about. I'm telling you, women are weird. They hug anything that moves. They go potty in groups of 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm going potty. Anyone going to go along? I mean, you're going to hear me say to my buddy Jay, hey, Jay, I'm going to John. You want to come with me? It's not going to happen, ladies.
Negative.
Okay. So anyway, I better move along. You got to make sure your pasture, that's the green grassy, not your pastor, is well informed. A good leader keeps people informed. And you infuse every position in the group as importance. I have 8 charter schools. They're called Leman Academy of Excellence. I have 6 of them in the state of Arizona and 2 in the state of Colorado. Now, I told you I graduated 4th and bottom of my class in high school. I wasn't lying. And isn't it, it's amazing what God has in plans. If somebody told me years ago I would have 8 charter schools, or if my teachers saw Leman Academy of Excellence, they'd fall over and die. They'd say that can't happen. Well, it did happen. But we had a janitor at one of our schools who was so helpful because a little first grader had pulled her tooth out during school. And she inadvertently put it on her tray and she dumped her garbage, her leftover lunch, into a 50-gallon big plastic container. And this janitor plowed through 50 gallons of garbage, and he found that tiny little first grader's tooth. He received the Way of the Shepherd Award at our ceremony, because that's the way Jerry was. He was the first one there when a kid hurled, okay, he had to clean it up. He was a servant leader, and he was the janitor. And so, again, infuse every position with importance. Let people know you care. My little daughter, Lauren, I'm so proud of. She's the one that works at Disney. She was in the car with me, and we were driving, and she was on the phone with this kid for about 20 minutes. And I heard her address his name. His name was Phil. And when she hung up, I said, honey, that's Phil. Isn't that the kid I took to a ball game? And he was such obnoxious. And yeah, that's him. I said, well, why did you call him? She said, well, I called him because nobody likes him. I said, well, I called him because nobody likes him. And I thought, wow. And that little Lauren today, at age 33, she still invests her time in people. She's the one that's going to go with the underdog. She's the one that's going to do the helping hand. Parents, you have a lot to do with how your kids turn out. Leaders, if you're a good benevolent leader and you really care about people, those people would knock down walls for you. I remember coming back the first time I did Oprah Winfrey show. I did her show 5 or 6 times, I think. I came back, I told my wife, those women would run through the wall. She said, everybody get up and run through that wall. They would follow her advice like lemmings. And so as a great leader, people are willing to follow you if they see that authenticity and that realness in you. Now, in your flock, and in every flock of sheep, there's what they call a hedge runner. And that little sheep will run the hedge. He'll run the barbed wire, or whatever fencing is there. And there's usually one in the crowd who will try to dig under and get out. Well, I asked the question in a wonderful little book, The Way of the Shepherd, what do you do with this hedge runner? Let me tell you what you do with the hedge runner. You got somebody in your organization that's a cancer. You get rid of them. So what do you do with the sheep? 2 words, lamb chops. You eat the sucker. You get rid of them. And so there's times as a leader, you have to make tough calls. And by the way, nobody should pay for your leadership other than you. As a leader, it takes strength, it takes courage to make those tough decisions. Do we rely on the Lord for that? We do every day. That's part of being a great leader. That goes hand in hand. I shouldn't have to tell you that, but I just did. So, again, when there's a problem, you deal with it. You deal with it as quickly as you possibly can. How about this one? Rotate, the sheep. They don't always have to be in the same pasture. It's the old principle of, somebody may not be working out on the good bus that you're the captain of. But do you have to throw them off the bus? No, maybe you just find them a different seat on that same bus. So don't be knee-jerk. Don't just get rid of people. You got to believe in people. I'd ask you the question, how many people believe in you? And I'll do that in a few minutes. You reassure your sheep by being visible. If you're a leader, how visible are you? I tell our principals at Leman Academy, I want you out on the street, on the curb, meeting those scholars. We call them scholars. We're a classical school. And we get to know the car, the driver. Sometimes it's grandma, grandpa, or sometimes it's a little learning center that drops off the kids at our school. But part of that is for safety. And I want music. I want music when kids come into school. I want to see kids out there shaking their little booty coming to school. I think school ought to be fun. And music is something that I think helps us navigate life better. How about this one, leaders? Don't let problems fester. When I was a dean of students, I had 8 secretaries in our area. And there were a couple of them that drove me wacko. And they would come in many times with tears in their eyes and say, Dean Leman, could I see you for a second? Stupid me, I opened the door and asked them to sit down. And I hear their tale of woe about this person or that person. They're whiners. By the way, parents, if you have a whiner kid, what you need is a wine cellar. You need a place to put that little kid where he can whine to the moon. But he doesn't have the right to whine at the breakfast table or the dinner table. So anyway, this woman, she came in this, it was the second time she did her little dog and pony act. I said to myself, Leman, you've written books on this subject, for Pete's sake. You've got to take the bull by the horns. So the next time she came in, I was ready for her. I said, I'm so glad you're bringing this to my attention. So I take her, I said, come with me. And we go right to the person's desk that she's complaining about. I looked the person in the eye and I said, Mary Jane, Alice has something to tell you. Alice? well, it's no real big thing, blah, 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 blah. I mean, she backed off like a scared kitten. But sometimes you just have to take the little bull by the horn and bring these two people together and say, here it is, solve it. I'm not your mother here, okay? So being a good leader, you got to be action-oriented. My wife says I have a nose for people like a bird dog. I think I have a good nose for people. And I got to tell you this about Jay. I met Jay when he was with Mission of Hope. And I came home. I meet a lot of people in this world. I'm good at forgetting people too, because I'm getting older. But I came home and I told her about this guy I met named Jay Richardson. I said, man, I wish I lived closer to him. He's just a guy that he's the real deal. He's a fun guy, he's smart. He's got a beautiful, nice wife. But, use your nose. Some of you got good noses. Sometimes you're in situations. I told my kids when they're growing up, you're out, all of a sudden that little oh goes off inside of you, and the situation's a little dicey. That's the Holy Spirit just reaching in and telling you, hey, back off. This is the time when, how many parents have told a parent, listen, you get in a situation, you call me. Don't get me going on cell phones. This is another topic for another time, but you can probably imagine what I think of introducing kids to cell phones. So anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah, I told you about that. So I brought notes, which is very uncharacteristic of me. The only reason I brought notes, to tell you the truth, is I didn't want to let Jay down. Okay? I want to make sure I got everything I wanted to share. So we come to the next part is the staff of direction. Now, how about this? Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Well, I didn't invent that. Someone else did. But the rod, there are people who have the rod and they think it's a whooping stick. Let me tell you, the shepherd used the rod to count the sheep. He would stand at the gate and count them with the help of that little rod. And yes, there'd be a time when the shepherds say, all right, sheep, come on, we're moving from pasture A to pasture B. And there might be one little sheep in that says, I'm not moving. And they dig their little hoofs in the turf, and there they are, they're not moving. Well, what does the good shepherd do? Say, well, have a good day, stay here by yourself, and be sure to greet Mr. Coyote for me. No, that's not what he does. He goes over, he takes the rod, he gives him a little shot in the tail, moves him along. Why does he do that? Because he loves the sheep. A more honest answer is he doesn't want to lose a sheep. That's going to affect his income. We all know the story of the Good Shepherd. He'd go way out of his way to get that one little sheep that was stuck in the barbed wire. Well, that's what you have to do as a leader. Sometimes your people are emotionally stuck, or you know darn well they're having a problem or two. You find a way to ease your way into that person's confidence in life. You be the helper in that situation. Here's one to think about. Don't confuse boundaries with bridles. Some of you as leaders are over the top, okay? You're not putting a bit in somebody's mouth. Who likes to be controlled? I spoke at Women of Faith. I think I told you something about Women of Faith. But when I told them I've chosen the topic today, how to be a submissive woman, I mean, if looks could kill, I was a dead man. But I got their attention. And of course, I didn't speak on that topic. They weren't sure they liked me at first, but they did give me a standing ovation. 4,000 women, or there 12,000 women in the round. That was unbelievable. Interesting experience. I love women. I was in a church in Tempe, Arizona, just outside of Phoenix years ago. And we were about to get together. You all done that. Some of you in leadership, you've been in that circle before the church service starts. And this young associate pastor walked in, and the head pastor, I'm telling you, 2 seconds after the guy was in the room, he was in his face. He said, I told you I wanted those chairs 16 inches apart, not 18 inches apart. And you could see the veins in his neck popping out. I was shocked. And after he said that, he took 3 steps back into the circle, hung his head, and said, let's pray. Let's pray. I was still in shock from what I just saw. He just ran over this guy. This guy was a control freak. And lots of times, control freaks find their way into leadership. They have no place in leadership. And by the way, for all you women, I have never heard a woman, again, I was a practicing psychologist for over 40 years behind closed doors. I never heard a woman say to me, you know what I love about my husband, Dr. Leman? I love the way he controls me. No. Women want to feel like Allstate. They're in good hands with Allstate. You know how long that ad's been around? Since I was a little kid. And I'm near death, okay? But that's how a woman wants to feel. That she's really loved and cared for. I want to remind leaders of this one. Fences give freedom. You need fences. You need boundaries. We all need that. God gives us boundaries in his scripture. You know, I got a chance to interview Robert Crandall, who was the CEO of American Airlines, firstborn child, by the way, if I remember right, and Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO at Southwest and chairman of the board. If you ever flew on Southwest, I think you'd admit you had more fun on Southwest, even though they had, not, I guess they're changing seats coming up soon, but they had just get on and sit wherever you want to sit and all that, which I don't like. But he said something. I got to know him really well. And he was so kind to me. I still save some of the letters he wrote me in our years of correspondence. He had a mind like a steel trap. In fact, I met him at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. He was traveling with another CEO on American Airlines, by the way. And I walked up to him and he said, Kevin. I hadn't spoken to him in over a year. He remembered my name. But one of the things he said at Southwest, and this is what I really want you to pay attention to, at Southwest, we're in the service business. It's incidental that we also fly airplanes. That's an amazing statement when you think about it. Mm. So we are in the service business. So remember, fences give us freedom. Next point, keep the flock moving. Oh, what does that mean? How many of you saw the great movie Hoosiers with Gene Hackman? Again, I'll try to shorten it, but long story short, this one kid who is a hot dog, for lack of a better term, coach benches him, puts him on the bench because he wasn't doing what he had asked him to do. And a couple of fouls happened, and before long, they were right down to 5 players. And when this incident happened, there was just one kid left that was eligible to go in. And the referee comes over to Gene Hackman, who's only got 4 players on the court. Son. He goes up to Gene Hackman and says, Coach, you got 4, you need 5. Well, the kid he had benched gets up to go in. He says, have a seat, sit down. And he says to the referee, my team is on the floor. If you're a leader, you have to know exactly who you are, who you stand for. Again, we talked about it briefly. The first step in leadership is know who you are. And if you're a tricycle person in life, hey, there's nothing wrong with being in a tricycle lane in life. Okay. But if you're a tricycle person, you on a route running that outside lane with the big dogs, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you. You're going to get run over. So know who you are. Be who you are. That's part of being authentic with people. So when your sheep are in trouble, you help them. You go after them. You all know the story of the prodigal son. That's a great one. This younger son, notice the oldest son is the one who stays on the farm. The youngest son, the one that wants to go and party, he says, hey, Dad, I want my part of the due. I'm out of here. And, of course, the father gives him his due. You know the story. He comes home. It's really it's a story of salvation is what it is, but you can turn that into family relationships real easily. But when the king saw his son come home from afar, he ran to him. I'm convinced the Lord just makes us make fools of ourselves sometimes to let us come to the realization, because God is not a controller. I know you all love to throw God's in control of everything. Really? Is he in control of the young family of 4 getting wiped out by a drunk at an intersection? Are you in control of that? No. God put some physical laws, spiritual laws into this universe. God grieves when that young family gets wiped out. I won't get into too much of that. But I want to take you to a phone call I got from my high school in Williamsville, New York, outside of Buffalo. And this happy voice said, Dr. Leman, this is so-and-so from Williamsville Central School System, and we are inviting you to be on our Wall of Fame. We would be so pleased if you would accept that honor. You know what? I laughed and cried at the same time. Do you ever laugh and cry at the same time? I did. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even ask when it was. I said, I'll be there. I'll be there. And my mother was somewhere between 85 and 90 at the time. And I told her about it, and I brought her up. We drove about an hour and a half from Jamestown, New York to Buffalo, New York area for the presentation. And on the way up, I had a great conversation with my mom. I said, hey, Ma, we fooled a few people in life, didn't we? So, oh, honey, I am so proud of you. And when she died, we found pictures that she had taken of the TV set with me on Good Morning America, Donahue, Sally Jesse Raphael, all these shows that I did over the years. She loved her baby son, believe me. And I said to her, I said, Mom, remember when the Amherst police brought me home? And she said, oh, I do. But you were such a good boy. Do you remember when I got caught driving golf balls toward the New York State Thruway? Oh, I do. But you were such a good boy. And all my mother could come up with was I was such a good boy. I'm telling you, I was always in trouble for something. I was not always a good boy. But that's the mother's love for her son. And, God loves us as we are. And that's hard for some of us to understand. But, talking to Grace Theological Seminary, somebody should understand that one. It ought to be anybody who's got grace as part of their name. God gives us grace. You and I are going to look perfect. We're going to look white as snow, so to speak, when that final day comes, because you committed your life to Christ. He was able to wash that out. Here's the problem with sin. Sin's like pizza, You ate it at 6 o'clock and you still taste it at 11 p.m. We don't forget the sin, but God does. So I'm not telling you to go out and sin. I'm just telling you, you have to understand that the creator of this universe is ready to wipe that slate clean. And we reach out. And then you have to remind people that failure isn't fatal. I think of King David. King David, one day, he's sitting out on his castle, and he looks across and he sees this woman. And he goes inside, gets his binoculars on, tunes those in real good, takes a look, and he says, wow, that is a woman. All you men can identify with that statement. And you know the story. The one problem. She's married. That's no problem for David. He sends that sucker to the front lines. You know the story. I won't repeat it. But he was a man after God's own heart. Sometimes we beat ourselves up because of sin or things we've said or done in our lives. We have to remember what God's grace is really all about. He does wash that scene clean. So failure, I always tell people when I get a chance to speak in churches, flaunt your imperfection. Flaunt it. It's not a natural thing. You women spend billions of dollars a year covering all your imperfections. You should see my wife when she gets married, gets ready in the morning. There's like 4 canisters of this and 3 of that. And she's got something that looks like poppy seed oil to me. She puts on her face. And my wife's a very beautiful woman, but in the morning, she's got issues. She's got issues. And it takes her a while to get ready, and I just marvel. I get up in the morning, put a baseball hat on, and some shirt that's close by, and I'm out the door. We're just different. Anyway, I need to move along. And then we have
Dr. Leman, we have about 12 minutes left. So, and I want to give some people a chance for some Q&A. So I'll give you a couple more minutes and then let's open it up for some Q&A if you're okay with that.
I'm fine with that. Well, let me just end with this then. You guys didn't get a page and a half of my notes, and you're not going to get them now because we're going to. But this is Jay's show, so Jay's running the show. So he's the leader. I'm the follower. We're going to do exactly what he says. So I'm going to wrap it up with this thought, okay? What if a person that you're leading isn't buying what you're selling? Well, let me tell you something. They will buy it if they buy you. It's all about relationships. Do you remember when I called that TV show Our Magazine? And she said, "Who's calling?" Do you remember what I said? Mr. Nobody. I put a little humor in it, Mr. Nobody. Well, what if I would have said, when she said that, this is, the award-winning New York Times best-selling author, Dr. Kevin Leman. You know what she would have said to me in essence? "Hey, chump, we get 1,000 you guys calling here trying to get in this show. Bye-bye." I wouldn't have got to second base. You want to make a change in someone's life? Do it gently. You got people you're worried about on your staff. You're not sure they're doing everything they should be doing. Just a simple conversation at 8 a.m. "Hey, Charlie, tell me about your day. What's going to happen today?" Then at 5 o'clock that afternoon, guess what? You're back in Charlie's office. "Hey, Charlie, tell me about your day." There's lots of ways to get people's attention. Okay, so I'm done. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys today. If you want to harpoon me, hang me out to dry, deep shot.
I don't think anybody's going to want to do that.
It's not. I'm used to it.
You've given us some awesome thoughts on shepherding and leadership today, and just a couple that stood out to me. One was, do you have the humility? And I'll never forget, just as a young pastor, struggling as a youth pastor, and just was taking some unfair shots in my view, and I have as the youngest in my family, I have a high need for justice. And I walked into my senior pastor's office, and he just looked at me and he said, "Jay, humility before honor." And that stuck with me ever since then. So for the last 27 years of my life, that continues to resonate. So I really appreciate that word on that, Dr. Leman.
Yeah, here's another one real quickly. Rules without relationship lead to rebellion.
That's right.
I stole that from Josh McDowell, my friend.
Yeah.
I said that once, and I said that was so profound. I'm going to remember that. Rules without relationship lead. So it's all about relationships.
Yep. Do we have some questions? All right, this is a good one. How can a leader set healthy boundaries that give freedom while also pursuing sheep who are in trouble?
Well, it is a tough question, but you cannot let anything take away your boundaries as a pastor. I'll quote a pastor from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a big church. He said, "Kevin, these people are killing me." And I said, "Is it the Satanists?" "No, my people. They're killing me." But the problem was, this is a guy who had boundaries, but he would change those boundaries because someone needed help. It can wait till Monday.
Right.
You'll see car dealers who are closed on Sunday. They'll say, "We'll beat any Sunday deal on Monday." You have to protect your family. I'm talking now to male leaders. Okay. In my opinion, and I'm in a lot of churches, your wife doesn't have to do jack diddly in the church. She should have complete freedom to be herself. If she wants to involve herself in the church, great. But I'm on the side that if you don't protect yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, It's just like on the airline when you hear the announcement we've all heard for years, when the oxygen mask drops with a child, put it on yourself first, because you can't help if you don't have oxygen. And so, because so many pastors, and most pastors, by the way, are firstborn or only born children, but most of them are so pleaser oriented. I wrote a book called Smart Women Know When to Say No. I try to teach women no power. Men are usually better at saying no than women are. Women tend to be the pleasers. So back to that question. Repeat that question. I want to make sure I've touched on enough of that.
How can a leader set healthy boundaries that give freedom while also pursuing sheep who are in trouble?
Okay. I think I can help you. I can't help you right now. We're at dinner, but I'll give you a call first thing tomorrow morning. Would that suffice? In other words, you protect the home ground. You protect your kids. I mean, I've heard every pastor's kid story I think there ever was, and pastor's wives thing. I remember one lady, she said, yeah, on Mother's Day, my husband always goes down to the Christian bookstore and buys me something with a fish on it. I thought, oh boy, aren't you lucky? Hey, gentlemen, you got to know who you're married to. You got to know everything about that woman. You're the Arthur Fiedler. You're the conductor of the orchestra. You're the one that brings the woodwinds and the brass and everything together to create that symphony. And certainly in your intimate life, you got to be a leader. But to be a leader, you have to have well-defined boundaries. How long has it been since you heard about a pastor who had moral failure? And it wasn't long ago. I got news for you. I just got wind of one up in Colorado, a big, huge church. All kinds of nasty things going on. That hurts the church. But you know what? You protect yourself. You don't put yourself as a pastor in a situation where you could be compromised. Don't bring temptation in the front yard. Jesus said there'll always be temptation, but don't open your door and invite him in and have a seat. My goodness.
It's good. It's good. Well, I love what 1 Peter 5, verses 2-4 says. It says, shepherd the flock of God, which is among you, serving as overseers, not by compulsion, but willingly, not for dishonest gain, but eagerly, nor as being lords over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the crown of glory that does not fade away. Dr. Leman, as I read the scriptures and, shepherding is obviously at the heart of who God is, right? He's our great shepherd, and Jesus is the good shepherd. And over again, God comes after the priests or the pastors or the leaders that when he sees that the people are without a shepherd, it breaks his heart. And so, thank you so much for today and giving us your time and giving us your insights. And, you've given us plenty, to ponder on and to put into practice. So, you are a dear friend, and I'm super grateful that you would donate your time today to talk to a few of us and help us be better pastors.
My pleasure, Jay. Keep in touch. Good luck to you. Remember, you don't have to be the perfect pastor; just be a good pastor. Years ago in seminaries, they used to teach pastors, don't get close to the congregation. Don't get close to the congregation. We know better today. Leadership.
That's right.
But have those boundaries. Those boundaries will protect you and your family. God bless you as you do his will in your life.
Thank you, Dr. Leman. Just for everybody watching, of course, we will be sending out a link in the next couple of days. And then want to let you know, next month, we will have Dr. Mark Dean Haywood, our very own provost and chief academic officer at Grace School of Theology, who will be our guest. And he's going to be talking about building trust in teams. And his tagline is leadership travels at the speed of trust. That session is going to be on December 9th from 10 to 11. And then also in December, you'll be receiving a couple of other communications from me regarding the lineup for next spring. And then also I'm going to be sending out a survey so that you can provide some feedback for us so that we can be better at what we're doing as we try to equip you. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.